You were never supposed to notice. That's the mistake. Not your debt, not your rent, not your lack of savings, not your inability to buy a house, not your frustration, not your anger, not your cynicism. The mistake was noticing. You were supposed to stay busy. That's the deal. Keep moving, keep working, keep consuming, keep scrolling, keep paying, keep adapting, keep surviving. Never stop long enough to look at the machine. Because the machine only works when you think your problems are personal. That's the secret. Not hidden, not complicated, just buried beneath the noise. If you're struggling, it's your fault. If you can't afford a home, it's your fault. If you can't retire, it's your fault. If you can't start a family, it's your fault. If you're exhausted, it's your fault. If you're anxious, it's your fault. If you're drowning, somehow that's your fault too. Millions of people experiencing the same problems, same outcomes, same pressures, same obstacles. And we're expected to believe every single one is a unique personal failure. What are the odds? You ever notice how nobody asks where all the pressure came from? They only ask why you can't handle it. That's an interesting distinction. Nobody asks why 2 incomes became mandatory. Nobody asks why housing detached from wages. Nobody asks why healthcare became a luxury expense. Nobody asks why college became a mortgage. Nobody asks why retirement became a fantasy. Those conversations get uncomfortable because eventually somebody starts following the trail, and the trail always leads upward. The modern economy has become a giant machine for transferring pressure downward. That's what it does. That's its function. That's its purpose. Everything else is branding. Risk moves downward. Responsibility moves downward. Sacrifice moves downward. Costs move downward. Consequences move downward. But wealth? Wealth moves upward. Funny system. Every crisis somehow arrives at your doorstep, never theirs. The bank gets rescued. You get austerity. The corporation gets subsidies. You get layoffs. The investors get protection. You get volatility. The executives get bonuses. You get motivational speeches. And somehow you're supposed to be grateful. That's the part that fascinates me. The expectation of gratitude. You should be grateful for your job, even though productivity exploded and wages didn't. You should be grateful for your apartment, even though rent ain't your future. You should be grateful for your health care, even though you're one emergency away from financial disaster. You should be grateful for your opportunities, even though most of them come with interest rates attached. Grateful. A generation locked out of ownership is told to be grateful for access. That's where we are. You don't own the house, you access it. You don't own the software, you access it. You don't own the movies, you access them. You don't own the music, you access it. You don't own the platform, you access it. You don't own the audience, you access it. Everything temporary, everything rented, everything revocable. Ownership creates independence. Access creates dependence. That's why one is becoming rare and the other is becoming mandatory. And here's the thing that nobody wants to admit. This isn't an accident. Not because somebody planned it, because somebody benefited from it. And then somebody else benefited, and then somebody else. And eventually, an entire structure formed around extraction. Nobody had to design the cage. They just kept getting rewarded for adding bars. Look around. What industry gets paid when housing becomes affordable? Very few. What industry gets paid when debt disappears? Very few. What industry gets paid when people become independent? Very few. Dependence is profitable. Problems are profitable. Insecurity is profitable. Stability isn't. That's why every solution feels temporary. Every reform feels cosmetic. Every promise feels recycled. The incentives never change. And incentives are the real government. Not Congress, not presidents, not parties. Incentives. Incentives determine outcomes. Incentives determine behavior. Incentives determine priorities. Incentives determine what gets protected and what gets sacrificed. And once you understand incentives, the entire performance becomes impossible to watch the same way. The speeches sound different. The headlines sound different. The advertisements sound different. The promises sound different. Because you start hearing what's actually being said. Adapt. Accept less. Expect less. Own less. Need less. Delay more. Wait longer. Work harder. Borrow more. Always more from you. Never less from them. That's why younger generations are angry. Not because life is difficult. Life has always been difficult. That's not the issue. The issue is watching enormous wealth, enormous productivity, enormous technology, enormous abundance, and somehow ending up with less ownership, less security, less stability, and less freedom. That's the contradiction. That's the crack in the story. That's the thing people weren't supposed to notice. Because once enough people notice the contradiction, they stop blaming themselves. And once they stop blaming themselves, they start examining the system. And once they start examining the system, they start identifying incentives. And once they identify incentives, they start asking dangerous questions. Questions like who benefits, who pays, who owns, who rents, who extracts, who builds. Those questions spread. And institutions hate questions that spread. Because every system survives on a story, and every story survives on a belief. And belief becomes difficult when reality keeps interrupting the narrative. That's why trust is evaporating, not because people suddenly changed, because the story stopped matching the experience. And when a story stops matching reality, reality eventually wins. Every time. No exceptions. The machine expected your labor. The machine expected your attention. The machine expected your money. The machine expected your compliance. It never expected your scrutiny. That was the mistake. You noticed. And once people start noticing, history tends to get very uncomfortable for those who benefited from nobody paying attention.